I am Vivian McPeak, and this is Hempresent. If you have feedback or would like to suggest a guest or topic for Hempresent, email me at hempresent@gmail.com. I greatly enjoy hearing from you, the listener. CLEO was founded in 2021 with the mission to bring safe, tested cannabis products to historically underserved markets. Andrea Berrios, the co-founder and chief commercial officer of CLEO, wakes up every day inspired to bring the joys of cannabis to others through thoughtful destigmatization, increased cultural access, and product and packaging development of safe, tested CBD and Delta-8 gummies. She leads on marketing, social media management of ambassador and retail partners, as well as the creation of all brand materials. And she's joined me today to tell us all about it. Welcome, Andrea, to Cannabis Radio.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. We've got a lot to cover in a short amount of time. I want to get into some of the things that might make CLEO unique in the field of commercially available CBD products. But first, just give us a little history of how the business got started.
Sure. My co-founder and I started CLEO while we were both at business school. We were both at UC Berkeley, School of Business, actually just graduated this past May. He'd been working in cannabis for a few years prior to starting business school, and I was very involved in the school's cannabis industry club, just trying to learn everything that I could about the industry and see where there was a place for me. And so naturally, we were kind of always having conversations about cannabis, and we're exploring starting a company together, but it really came together after, we had a break at school. He went to Minnesota, I went home to Texas, and, just asking friends where we could get some cannabis. They mentioned they had been taking Delta-8, something that neither of us had really heard about at the time, but we bought some gummies and brought them back and started to look into it, and it kind of spiraled from there.
When so many others have focused on active THC sales, why did you choose to primarily market CBD products? And what should consumers know about the effects of CBD as opposed to the euphoric or intoxicating effects of THC?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the regulated THC market is a very difficult space to operate in. And for a long time, the name of the game was vertical integration and scale. And I'll tell you, on top of all of the regulatory challenges, there's a lack of access to financing. The regulation is very expensive. There's significant taxation. There's the impact of 280E, and there are vertically integrated players that are already out there with a lot of cash. Now we're seeing great brands start to emerge. But even so, this is only in the mature markets that have the co-manufacturing capacity that allows an unlicensed brand to be able to manufacture and bring a product to market under a partner's brand. In the hemp side of things, we don't have many of the challenges that the regulated market faces. It's still difficult to get financing and banking, and it's difficult to advertise. But we don't have the restriction on shipping across state lines. We don't have the 280E or some of the heavier taxation that the regulated market faces. And we have the ability to build a truly nationwide brand, while at the same time marketing a cleaner and more compliant product to meet the needs of consumers that don't live in recreational markets. I did want to call out that we don't only market CBD products. We also have Delta-8 THC products, which are hemp-derived and deliver psychoactive effects kind of comparable to what you would expect from a Delta-9 THC gummy from any regulated dispensary. I think consumers should know that the cannabis plant has over 100 different cannabinoids, and they all interact with our system in a unique way and produce different effects. I think for so many years, we've thought of cannabis as Delta-9 THC somewhat exclusively. And so there's this perception that all cannabis will make you feel high. And that's definitely not the case. There are many cannabinoids that are not psychoactive, and CBD is one of them. I think for someone that's looking for relief from physical or mental stress, CBD is a great option that will help to alleviate some of that without the feeling of being high. I'd also like to add that consumers should know that incorporating cannabis into their wellness routine is a process, and it's not one size fits all. So if you're interested in testing out cannabis for some of the amazing therapeutic properties in the plant, it will require some trial and error to see which cannabinoids work best for your body and at what doses. We have 3 different doses, 3 different products, and I've heard people use all of them for sleep, for example. I couldn't tell someone, this one's going to work for you, because that's not necessarily the case. It might be the other one. Or as another example, my wife takes 2 of our Ease gummies for cramps, and that's 100 milligrams of CBD. The average CBD gummy on the market is about 15 milligrams. So if she hadn't experimented, she probably would have stopped at the 15 and said, CBD doesn't work for me, before finding something that ultimately does work.
Great answer. That just all makes a hell of a lot of sense. Your bio mentions your goals of thoughtful destigmatization increased cultural access, and product and packaging development of safe tested CBD and Delta-8 gummies. Could you talk about some of the ways that CLEO approaches the thoughtful destigmatization of cannabis,
Yeah.
which we know is so important after, a century of bullshit, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Could not agree more. I mean, I think first and foremost, my co-founder and I are huge evangelists of the plant. I've been consuming since I was a teenager. I've always been a huge believer in the benefits of the plant, and we really hope that that comes across in all of our marketing. We make it very clear that we are very pro cannabis, and we're not trying to draw any kind of distinction between cannabis and hemp. We also don't want the customer to feel like they're doing anything wrong when they purchase CLEO. So we've put a ton of effort into making the CLEO website look and feel as professional as any other CPG brand out there, so that buying CLEO feels like you're buying a premium product and you're not doing something that you shouldn't be doing. We also push educational content across our website, our social media, and our email marketing. We're building that up over the next couple of months, but already have enough for a consumer to meet our product line and understand how it's going to affect their bodies and where the cannabinoids come from. And we also try and make it clear on the website that psychoactive does not equal bad. I feel like in the hemp space, there's a lot of distinction that's drawn between CBD and all of the other psychoactive cannabinoids where, maybe the implication is that one is kind of okay and the other one is maybe not okay. We don't subscribe to that at all. We highlight the therapeutic properties of the psychoactive products as well, and we make it clear that there's no shame in consuming cannabis for recreational purposes at all.
So it's really, a part of this is, if I'm not wrong, is mainstreaming and normalizing cannabis and kind of, breaking off from the moldy old cultural associations, which were so effectively used by prohibitionists.
Absolutely.
As a leading queer and Latinx entrepreneur in the cannabis industry, you have stated that you're passionate about using your personal identity and platform to be a role model for those in your community. Why is that important to you, and what kind of feedback have you received to date?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to me because this is my life and my community, and I really care about them. I grew up in Texas with Nicaraguan parents, and the stigma against cannabis was very real in my household. Cannabis consumption was always this big secret that I kept from my parents, to the point where I didn't even tell them about this business until 6 months after we launched a product in market. Like, we were already in retail stores in Texas, and then finally I told my parents about it because they were always very anti-cannabis. As I've approached my 30s, I've seen many of my peers' relationships with their parents and cannabis evolve, especially as there are more and more dispensaries opening up and parents become more open-minded, and it's kind of something that they get to share. And I wanted to be able to say the same for myself. And I think the first step on that journey is cannabis education in Spanish for my community in particular. I think for many people, cannabis can be this scary thing. And I think that comes from a place of not actually understanding what it is or how it affects us, and our perception of cannabis being so influenced by and conflated with politics and prohibition. Cannabis has been in my life for about 15 years now, and never in the United States have I seen cannabis content in Spanish. I've never been walking down the street and seen anything. I've never been in a dispensary and seen any materials in Spanish. And even in Latin America, I only see cannabis content if I go looking for it. And I can't say the same thing about alcohol. There's a deep history with the Latino community and cannabis prohibition. I think that means people out there aren't getting relief. They're not being introduced to this wonderful plant, and it's not normalized in the same way that other substances are normalized in our society. So as far as feedback,
Wow.
We're about a year into this journey, and we have a long way to go to get our name out there. I think open call, if any brands want to join us on this journey, please reach out. I will say I was recently talking with another Latino founder in the space, and when I mentioned what we were trying to do with CLEO's language accessibility, it immediately clicked, and he could clearly see the need for more education and destigmatization. So it's always encouraging to get that kind of response from your own community.
Nice. We have a couple minutes till the first break, so I just want to keep kind of diving through all this. CLEO is committed to growing more diverse representation in cannabis, and you are walking that talk with a 3% donation of your profits to organizations that are working on increasing social equity in the industry, which is, really a really important goal, and one of the pet peeves on this show. Can you talk more about that aspect of your philanthropy? What kind of groups are you donating to?
Yeah.
What do you hope to achieve by doing so?
Yeah. So we're doing a profit sharing model to start because we're a really small team, and it's what we can do, but hoping to grow that over the next couple of years. The organization that we've identified so far as being really aligned with the change that we want to see is called New Project, and they help to bring more entrepreneurs of color into the cannabis space and provide grants and support and office hours and things like that. I think broadly, any organization that wants to bring about racial equity in the cannabis industry or language accessibility in the cannabis industry, we're really interested in working with. I mean, you obviously know how the cannabis industry has built up and left out some of the people that have been most affected by its prohibition. And so we want to make sure that we're playing our part. As we grow, we definitely want our hiring to make sure that our organization represents the broader United States. I think you see, especially when it's, Hispanic Heritage Month is coming up, Pride Month recently passed, and what you see is a lot of brands that are giving a lot of attention to and placing a lot of commercialization behind these months. And I think it's great that donations are going out, but it's not a group that's thought about on an annual basis. And it's certainly, usually not groups that are represented in the leadership of the company or even, all of the staff of the company. And so we don't want to get caught up in that as we grow.
Yeah, it's historically communities of color have been so disproportionately targeted and prosecuted by prohibitionists.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is those communities are also not, they're kind of at the back of the line in the cannabis industry, and the same old kind of, old fat white guys with ponytails with money are coming in and kind of, dominating the industries, and that's starting to change, and there's starting to be pushback and awareness, which is why this whole message is so important. I am talking to Andrea Berrios, and we're going to come back after this short break and talk more about CLEO. Don't go anywhere.
Time to roll out for the people that let us Hempresent. Hang loose. We're coming right back.
We're back on Hempresent with Andrea from CLEO. Your marketing information points out that many consumers struggle with how unpredictable edible CBD and Delta-8 products can be due to unregulated testing in the industry and a lack of transparency from other brands. I think many folks are familiar with THC and even CBD by now, but you touched briefly on Delta-8. Can you tell us a little bit more? What is Delta-8 and what makes it unique?
Yeah, of course. So Delta-8 THC is what's called an isomer of Delta-9 THC. And Delta-9 THC is what you think of when you think of cannabis, weed, marijuana, pot, whatever you want to call it. That's kind of what we have been conditioned to think as cannabis. And it basically, being an isomer means it's made up of the same atoms. And so very chemically similar, Delta-8 THC to Delta-9. The main difference between the two is that one has a double bond on the 9 carbon, hence Delta-9, and the other has the double bond on the 8 carbon, so Delta-8. Because of this similar chemical structure, Delta-8 THC is psychoactive, though only about 60% as strong as Delta-9. Delta-8 was little known prior to 2019, but the 2018 Farm Bill, which specified that only cannabis products that contain a concentration of Delta-9 THC above 0.3%, very technical, are federally illegal. And so that opened up the door to all of these other cannabinoids that are out there. What makes Delta-8 unique is that finally there's a legal psychoactive option for consumers in a prohibition state. Just because someone lives in a prohibition state like Texas does not mean that they don't have demand for cannabis. It just means that in the past, they had to take the legal risk of getting their supply from the legacy market or just go without. And for many people, going without means a decrease in quality of life, period. Mass media portrayals of cannabis equate consuming with getting high or being detached from reality, but we really see cannabis as medicine. And we also don't see any shame in choosing to use a psychoactive product for recreational purposes either. We think everyone should have access to cannabis, and Delta-8 helps us do that.
What kind of safety standards and testing do you implement to guarantee the safety and purity of your products?
Yeah, we do a few things. So first and foremost, we run a full panel lab test on every batch of our gummies, which goes above and beyond the potency lab testing that is required to legally sell the gummies. So this lab test will catch any heavy metals or residual solvents or mycotoxins that might be present in the gummies. We also use durable, child-resistant packaging, and we completely stay away from any branding that might appeal to children at all. So we have no cartoons, no neon colors. We're not using, known candies and spraying them or anything like that. So a kid won't see this product and immediately be interested. It looks like it could be a can of Altoids or something like that. We also thoughtfully dose the products so that a first-time cannabis consumer can approach our products and not be intimidated. So even if a first-time consumer takes our strongest product, They might be a little bit higher than they want to be, but, not drastically. So it's not the crazy stories you hear from, when someone took an edible in high school and they were on the couch for hours. It's a very kind of welcoming product. So lately we've been seeing increasingly stronger doses of Delta-8 being marketed. And it does concern me a little bit that someone might take these gummies and be turned off of cannabis forever. So we do try and approach that very thoughtfully.
Nice. Your products, CLEO products, can be shipped directly to the consumer. Is that correct?
Yes.
Where are CLEO products available? What markets do you serve?
We ship to every state in which it's legal from our website, yourfriendcleo.com. So even though the cannabinoids that we use are federally legal, there are some states that have chosen to restrict them, and we don't allow sales into those states, Washington being an example or Colorado. Our CBD only gummies are shipping to every state. Our gummies containing Delta-8 are shipping to just over 30. We're also available in an amazing retailer in Texas called Go Easy. They're in the Houston and Dallas location, and a few shops in Berkeley where my co-founder and I went to school. But over the next few months, we plan to significantly grow our retail presence. So, hoping to have an update for you.
Nice. What has surprised you the most in this whole process of you launching this business and getting involved in this kind of nascent but expanding industry? Is there anything that has kind of surprised you?
I don't know that anything has surprised me. I kind of expected this to happen, but I suppose I was a little surprised by how difficult it is to get financing that works and have sufficient working capital financing to grow the business. It's, because of the industry that we're in, we're considered high risk. And so we can't use any banking solution necessarily. We have to go look for special partners who typically take, a larger percentage of profits than they would for a t-shirt company, for example. And we also don't have access to many of the small business loans that other businesses have access to. We also don't really, because we're a new company and we're a new brand, we don't have credit terms with many of our suppliers. And so everything has to be paid for in cash at the moment that it's manufactured or purchased. And obviously our sales will come in on a much longer timeline than that. And so it does create a working capital challenge. I think we're working through it, but I wasn't expecting to spend as much time working through it as we do.
Yes. I mean, since you're not dealing with Delta-9 active THC, right? But you're still dealing with the stigma that exists, that's kind of pervasive across, the entire banking and finance world, right? There's still this like deep stigma and almost a fear, I think, of dealing with cannabis on an equitable level.
Absolutely. And it even affects things that you wouldn't even think about, like our ability to get web hosting or our ability to use Shopify, for example. We're restricted in places that you don't even think about. I think banking is the obvious one, but yeah, the stigma is everywhere.
Wow, that's crazy. I spent 30 years as the executive director of Seattle Hemp Fest up here in Seattle, where I'm at. And we had the same issues, and we had several banks drop us because we had the word hemp in our name. And then, when the Occupy Wall Street thing happened, we decided to, divest from a large corporate banking thing and wanted to move to a credit union. And we had the same problem. It's like, oh, we can't work with you because the words hemp is in your name. I'm like, well, wait a minute, I can go down to Whole Foods and get some hemp food right now and get some hemp milk. And we're a 501c3 federal nonprofit. What do you mean? We can't open an account here? It's just lunacy, right?
Yes.
And that was years ago. And so we're just still dealing with this craziness, which is why, I believe that people that are entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs in cannabis, that's kind of like the next level of activism. It's a level of activism that takes it to the next level that community activists like myself were only able to accomplish so much. And I feel like people that are taking that dive and taking the risks and investing their time, their money, their energy, their life in cannabis businesses are really, that's kind of like the next front line of the movement, in my opinion. Do you agree?
I mean, I hope that we could. I feel like we owe so much to community activism. So I don't want to say that I hope I'm out there and having the same impact, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is my business, my livelihood, obsessed with this, wake up every single day thinking about this. And, I think we're trying to bring to it we're really taking seriously our role as helping to create the category in prohibition states and bring about the education. So yeah, I hope that our work has an impact and we can see some of that. We're certainly not afraid of getting involved and getting our name out there. And so looking forward to working with everyone on that mission.
Great. We got about 1 minute till the next break. You kind of mentioned that CLEO is unique in that it targets and serves Spanish-speaking communities. Have you had any kind of feedback? I mean, have you heard from people in the Spanish-speaking communities?
Yeah,
and are they surprised?
Yeah, so I think candidly, this is an ambitious goal that started from a place of really wanting to have the education in place for my friends and family to be able to learn a little bit about what I'm doing. And I think it will evolve over the next couple years. But like I've said, I've been consuming for about 15 years, never encountered any cannabis content in Spanish. So we're starting there. Our website is fully accessible in Spanish, and we're trying our best to put thoughtful and educational content up so that consumers can get educated. When we started CLEO, I was trying to see what's already out there in Spanish. And if I type in something like ¿Qué es Delta-8? What is Delta-8? There were only 2 or 3 Spanish language articles highlighted before every single result turned to English. And so that's pretty common against any cannabis search term that you have with Spanish language. The next step will be the Spanish language social media, which we plan to use to get educational content out there in an easily digestible and shareable format so that it can be shared with friends, family. You can tag them, show them videos, things like that, start to break down the stigma. And then in the next couple months, we hope to begin direct community outreach through events. So actually host educational events and also partner with Spanish language influencers. For now, candidly, we have the language accessibility. Haven't seen a ton of customers come in and use it, but I, am hopeful that one day we will. And, we have ambitious plans to get involved there.
All right. We're going to take another quick break and come back with our final question. So don't go anywhere.
Time to roll out for the people that let us Hempresent. Hang loose. We're coming right back.
All right. And we are back with Andrea Berrios from CLEO. I just have to say that you have just taken such a thoughtful approach to your business. I'm just, I've done so many of these interviews. I'm just really so impressed with where you're coming from and how you're going about it. Can you give the URL again? Is that where people can learn more about CLEO products? And what final thoughts would you like to leave our listeners with today?
Yeah, thank you for that. So people can learn more about CLEO from our website. It's yourfriendcleo, CLEO.com, yourfriendcleo.com, or on our Instagram. Our handle is @yourfriendcleo. I think the final thought that I want to leave listeners with, maybe 2 thoughts. One is that, cannabis can be a very joyful thing and there's no shame in loving it and certainly no shame in trying it. And I think the other thought is that, there are a lot of states out there that don't have a robust medical market or a recreational market, and cannabis, it's just not something that people are comfortable with in those states right now. And I think in the meantime, hemp companies are the ones that are out there bringing about cannabis education and comfort with the category. States, and these are all states where consumers will ultimately have to be the ones that make the decision about whether or not cannabis sales will be allowed or not. And so in that sense, I kind of want to let everyone know, support your local hemp companies. I think there's a big distinction between hemp and cannabis today, but we're all trying to do our part in bringing about more acceptance and federal legalization. And I'm hoping we work together more in the future.
Right on. Yeah. We live in stressful times, and self-care is critical, and cannabis in all of its forms, I think, is just a great potential component of self-care. Yeah. And so that's why I think it's so great, everything that you're doing with CLEO. And I really look forward to kind of watching your progress as you go, because once again, I'm really impressed with your whole thoughtful approach. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right. My pleasure. Absolutely. That concludes this installment of Hempresent on Cannabis Radio. When it comes to prohibition, you've got the right not to remain silent. Activism requires a voice, so find your voice and speak up for justice, because resistance is fertile. The Hempresent intro music is 7 Mile Beach by Joanne Rand, and the outro music is Take Back the Plant by Stickerbush. See you next week, folks. Stay strong.
Marijuana, THC, sweet sativa, Dicker Queen, Santeria, Delta-8.
The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast, republication, or retransmission of this program without proper consent is prohibited.